If you do any sort of work with a microphone or any sort of audio work, pay attention to this video. It's going to be really important to you. Hey guys, Little V here. Yes, you can use my music, and no, I don't do tabs. And I just want to make a quick little video before we wrap up 2017 and move on to the new year. So I'm sure you've probably heard terms like acoustic treatment, sound isolation foam, soundproofing, etc. But what does that all actually mean, and what does that do to the overall sound of recordings? So let's start with acoustic treatment. So basically, acoustic treatment is all the stuff you put on the walls to stop your voice from carrying and bouncing off the walls and getting all those weird echoes and reverb off of your voice. Like, for example, right now you'll notice my voice is pretty dead. There's no echo, there's no reverb. Now, if we go over into the kitchen, and here's what it sounds like without soundproofing. Also, shoutouts to Little V from pre-Christmas. So the difference between the sound of the two rooms is this stuff. All the stuff you see behind me, this stuff I'm holding here, this here is called sound isolation foam. So what the foam does is it basically catches and displaces the reflections of your voice. So as you're speaking, for example, the sound is coming out of your mouth and it's bouncing off all the walls and then it's getting picked up by a microphone. By the way, just for funsies, I am using a good old Blue Yeti in this recording just to show you that even the cheap starter microphones sound fantastic when you have a proper room set up. So basically the foam is catching all the extra sound getting reflected off the walls, and it's either absorbing it or displacing it, depending on the type of isolation foam that it is. And because the sound is not traveling back to the source now, the microphone isn't getting the extra reflections and echo of your voice, so you're not getting that reverb sound that you got from, say, back in the kitchen. So you can see how this is really important if you do any sort of work that involves a microphone, or if you use speakers. Speakers have the same exact principle. They're gonna send sound out, they're gonna bounce all over the room, and then they're gonna send back the sound plus essentially the room reverb. And you don't want that, because you want a nice clear thing when you're working with audio. In fact, personally, in my previous setup, I didn't actually have proper isolation up on the walls. I had some stuff in the corners to kind of eat up some of those reflections, but nothing really on the walls. And because of that, I had a hell of a time kind of distinguishing bass frequencies when I was mixing. One of the reasons why there was a period of time there where my the bass in my recordings was not great, because honestly I would just go, I can't tell if this is the guitar, if this is the bass, or this is the kick drum. Get rid of all of it, because I can't tell anymore. Now that I can actually clearly hear the differences between the three parts, I can mix it better and overall just create a better and clearer mix. Now, sound isolation foam is not soundproofing foam. There is a difference. Sound isolation foam is meant to catch your voice and displace it, not fully absorb it, whereas soundproofing foam and soundproofing material is actually meant to go inside your walls and basically stop all the excess noise from traveling outside of a room. The basic principle is the more mass you have between the sound source, i.e. your voice or a guitar or a drum kit, the less the sound will get through into the outside world. Now, chances are, if you're watching this, you're either renting an apartment or you're living in your parents' house, and something tells me you probably don't have permission to start knocking down walls and putting up the soundproofing. So let's just talk about the foam for sound isolation today. So I have two types of sound isolation foam up on the walls right now. I have stuff from Auralex and I have stuff from Arrowzoom. The Auralex stuff I bought from McQuaid's because I've been a loyal customer for those guys for years, so I just figured, I'll get their soundproofing foam here. Arrowzoom actually contacted me not too long ago and basically offered me some free goodies to make essentially a sponsored video, and well, I don't really like making videos on a product, especially for the purpose of selling a product, when I haven't actually tried it. So I turned down their offer and bought 100 pieces of this stuff because, yeah, I figure I'll just use it and cover up the room and we'll see how well they work. So consider this to also be essentially like a head-to-head review of Auralex foam and Arrowzoom. Both have their pluses, both have their cons. Anyways, so first and foremost, most important place to put the foam is behind your setup. So behind your computer, behind your speakers, for a number of reasons. One, typically when you're doing any sort of podcasting, gaming, audio recording, you're probably facing that wall, and that's your first reflection point. That's where all the sound is hitting first. You want to just cover that up. You don't have to necessarily cover the entire wall like I have right now, but just cover that up so that you don't get the weird reflections. But especially with your speakers too, cover all that up. Just that'll help immediately. You'll notice a huge difference right there. Second thing you want to start doing is putting up foam in all of the first reflection zones. Basically all the places where sound is going to hit first. And there's actually a super easy way to figure out where that is in your room. So a second set of hands works really well with this, so get a friend to come over or get a relative or someone else in the house to come help you out. But basically, you need them to be holding a mirror. So like in this case, for example, this is a little makeup mirror, And what you need to do is, while you have your setup here, while you're sitting in the chair, you want your friend to start walking around on the wall with the mirror up against the wall, and you want to move around the mirror until you can see your speakers in the reflection of the mirror. Basically, sound travels the same way light does. So basically, once you find out where you can see your speakers, that's where the sound from the speakers is going to reflect off of the walls and into your ear. So you want to stop and just basically foam up that area specifically. So right now, I've got it right there, and I've got it right there, as I'm sure pre-Christmas V probably already filmed this, so you can kind of see where everything is all set up. You also want to do that to the ceiling as well too, because the sound is also going to go up. Sound is omnidirectional. It's going to go in every direction, right? So yeah, do the top as well too. Now, you don't actually need to cover every square inch of your walls. In fact, a lot of cases, it tends to work better if you leave just a bit of room, either a foot, a few inches, something like that, in between all the panels, depending on how many panels you have to work with. The idea is you want to kind of have it displaced evenly around the wall. I am obviously not doing that, as you can see, but I'm also planning on essentially covering the rest of the walls, as you can see here. I'm in the middle of doing it. There's a big pile of foam right here. Another really useful thing is bass traps. You can probably see them in the corner of the room. Oh, that light's really bright. I'm going blind. Oh no. Bass traps essentially capture a lot of the low frequencies, and not just the mid frequencies, and really make a big difference when dealing with low frequencies and especially for mixing and stuff. That is really useful for mixing. Don't really need bass traps if you're using like a voiceover, or like if you're, commentating on gameplay or something like that. Now, on the topic of different frequencies and what frequencies these block out, isolation foam tends to block out mid-range frequencies primarily, not low, not high, which of course is usually the loudest and usually covers the most of the spectrum when it comes to like voice or anything like that. So if you're, for example, having problems with your subwoofer taking off the neighbors down below, this isn't going to do anything. In fact, the way you want to do that is put as much carpet below your subwoofer as humanly possible, and put basically as much mass and as much stuff. In fact, there's a fun method called the tennis ball method I would suggest you go check out, which is the same method you would use for essentially making a drum platform to not take off people. I'll be building one of those down the road, so if you guys would like to see a video on that, please let me know. All right, let's get down to brass tacks. Let's talk about the differences between these two foams, because I have opinions on both of them. Some are nice, some are not. So let's talk about Auralex first, because this is the first stuff I bought. I really have been enjoying this foam because it's nice and sturdy, it is thick, and even just from putting it in front of my mouth, you can hear it cuts out like a lot of sound. It absorbs a lot of extra sound which is exactly what I want. Now, the downside about this stuff is it is expensive. I believe a pack of 36 cost me like $400. And that's Canadian. I'm not sure how much it is in American. So this stuff is expensive, and that's not because it's like purple. It's like all the colors are the same price. So it works, but it's a little pricey. It's definitely, and considering I'm planning on covering the entirety of everything, it's expensive. Very expensive. Now let's talk about Arrowzoom for a second. Arrowzoom is a much more affordable brand, and it is you can get it in much bigger sizes, as you can see here too. This is, it's all in centimeters. This is 50 centimeters by 50 centimeters, and I think it's like 5 centimeters deep, which I believe works out to be like 20 inches. So it's like a 20 by 20 inch sheet as opposed to a foot by a foot. And you can cover a lot more mass with this. Also, the triangle shape is a lot better at displacing sound, but this thing doesn't, like, it barely cuts out sound whatsoever. Like, it's not great for actually like soundproofing. So again, if you're looking more for like a soundproofing material, this is not the one you want. This is very much for reflections, not soundproofing. Also, it says these guys are fire retardant, so I haven't checked it because I'm not going to start setting things on fire in my apartment. I already did that with the oven, hey! But that's especially useful for my setup because I'm dealing with a lot of hot lights. For example, there is, let's see, I don't know, like 1,500 watts of lights in my face right now. And even on the ceiling as well too, with the light up there, like I want to cut a hole in this so that it fits there, so the heat shouldn't set things on fire. So that's a plus. Now, as I mentioned before, more mass equals more soundproofing, but and as you can see, it's not very thick. I mean, like it's pretty flexible compared to the other stuff. In fact, when this ships, it ships wrapped up and super tight, and it takes about a day and a half to really expand out to its full size. which, yeah, so again, not great for soundproofing, but as an added bonus, it's pretty light, so it actually hangs up on the wall without a lot of tape or a lot of adhesive. So, yeah, it's good for that, and I believe about 100 of these are about $500. So as you can see, it's a lot cheaper, a lot more affordable, and you also get a lot more square footage for bang for your buck. That being said, again, I would not recommend this if you're trying to cut down on the noise. This will do the job of sound isolating, like it'll stop all the reflections, but it's not gonna do great if you're looking to try and stop your voice from leaving the room. All in all, I would actually recommend the Auralex stuff a lot more, just because it is more expensive, but you don't need much. Something tells me the room that you are currently sitting in is not a very big room, so you really don't need that much. And just the sheer fact that it's thicker and just blocks out more sound, it's gonna be more useful to especially to the average apartment goer, or someone, especially who plays the more extreme stuff, rock and metal, to not make it sound, at least cut down a little bit of the noise so that, you know, they can discern upstairs and downstairs that maybe you're not having a domestic dispute, and maybe you're just screaming at the top of your lungs and doing vocals. Either way, if you're doing any sort of work with microphones, any sort of audio work, as I mentioned at the start of this video, you need to treat your room properly. Honestly, a little bit goes a long way. It's gonna make everything so much easier to mix. It's gonna make your microphone sound 1,000 times better. Again, this is the cheap Blue Yeti that everyone gets as their starter microphone. And this thing sounds like $1 million right now because it's properly set up in your room with the proper acoustics. Hopefully you guys found this video informative and enjoyable. If you did, please leave a like down below, or a dislike if you hated it. I mean, there's a dislike button too, I guess. And if this is the first time you're seeing my ugly mug, hi, I'm Little V. I do music, like wheedle wheedlies and chugga chuggas and doodle 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 and stuff. Go subscribe. Anyways, rock on, peace out, and we'll see you next year, because it's in like a couple days. In fact, it'll probably be like 2 days by the time this video gets uploaded. Happy New Year!